Good evening and welcome to Thursdays with NAMI. My name is Peg Morrison. I'm the Director of Programs for the National Alliance on Mental Illness of North Carolina. Thursdays with NAMI is our way of pushing back against this COVID-19 era when we're all staying at home for the duration. We cannot explore the world the way we used to do, but we can step back, create positive spaces in our lives to celebrate positive energy and friendship, and that's what we're doing tonight. So I'm really glad you can be here with us. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. Hooray! I can't think of a better way to honor it than to spend some time talking with two of NAMI North Carolina's very talented, experienced family-to-family couples, Dale and Sandy Mann and Al and Mimi Smith. Welcome.
Hi.
Hello. Thank you.
So I've worked with these folks since I joined NAMI North Carolina in 2018. Not only do they teach NAMI classes, but they also teach others how to do NAMI programs. In the Smith's case, you teach family-to-family teachers. In the Mann's case, you teach family support group facilitators. So you have a big ripple effect impact on your communities and on the state, and we really appreciate all of you. You give us a lot of time and dedication. So we're going to get more into those details in just a minute. First, I want to thank the Department of Health and Human Services of North Carolina. That this show is partly funded by DHHS through the Federal Community Mental Health Services Block Grant Fund. We really appreciate your guidance and support, DHHS. Also, tonight's show is being recorded. If you have friends who couldn't be here tonight, please let them know. It's never too late. They can check out the program on NAMI North Carolina's YouTube channel, and we usually have it downloaded there within just a few days. All right, so as I said, tonight's show is about our family-to-family class. It was developed in 1991 and has been taken by hundreds of thousands of people across the world, mostly in the States, over 300,000 people. We know from reading class evaluations that the course saves relationships and saves lives. I've actually had someone say to me, family to family saved my life. It saved my relationship with my mother. So in a nutshell, family to family teaches loved ones of folks with mental illness what they're dealing with. If I have a son or brother who's suddenly not talking to people, not eating, not leaving his room, he's not the only one who's suffering. The whole family is upset and trying to figure out what's happening. Everything can go sideways quickly in a household where mental illness has invaded the space. So in an 8-week course, Family to Family teaches people the ins and outs of mental health, how to communicate in a way that de-escalates a tough conversation instead of ramping it up. And also really important, how to take care of yourself, how to cope. So now I'm thrilled to introduce Al and Mimi Smith and Dale and Sandy Mann. Welcome again. And I'm going to let you introduce yourselves.
We've been involved in NAMI since
About close to 10 years.
Yeah, about 10 years. We teach family to family. We are train the trainers for family to family, which means we train the teachers who are going to teach it. We're also NAMI Basics trainers, and we're teachers. And we've just been involved in everything NAMI.
I don't have anything. He described
You don't have
everything,
anything
so
there.
not too much more to add.
Okay. I am Dale Mann and wife Sandy Mann. We have been involved with NAMI for approximately 9 or 10 years, I think it was, and it started in Colorado Springs, where Sandy got very involved in the family-to-family class, and that touched her significantly, as Peg was talking earlier. Both became trained family-to-family teachers, family support group facilitators, and then were trained as state family support group trainers. And
well, we've gotten a little bit more involved here since we've moved. Dale's on the board of directors for NAMI North Carolina, and I have gotten very involved with the helpline in NAMI Wake County. So along with the programs that Dale mentioned.
Maybe Dale and Sandy, you could tell us how you're doing while they unfreeze.
Yeah, I'm sorry about this technical problem. We've been doing very, very well. We stay quite busy. Got a lot of structure, but we've been doing a lot of things that have been working very well for us. And probably the diet and exercise have been going very well, and we've enjoyed that. We're eating obviously at home more often, so but that's been working very well too. Sandy's been busy doing a lot of things. I'll let her talk about that. I've stayed quite busy with the NAMI board and also with the North Carolina Psychological Association board, where they've been doing a lot of good things during this period to help first responders. And then had a chance to catch up on a lot of the webinars, a lot of subjects and areas of interest that I've had for some time. So I've been watching a lot of those, and they've been very helpful. So how about you?
Well, we kind of kept the same schedule we had before. We are watching a lot more webinars and getting a lot of information that way. We keep a kind of a regular routine going. I like to cook, and I have more time to cook. And so I've enjoyed cooking because the guys are pretty nice to cook for. They are very appreciative, and Dale jumps right in there and he does all the dishes. So we're doing just really well. I did connect with, I got busy with ancestry.com. No, I don't want to make a, but trying to find ancestors and stories about ancestors. And I connected with one of Dale's cousins, and then we connected with another cousin because we're looking for Irish cousins, and they're very hard to find. If they made it over here to the United States, our records are pretty good, but their census records were destroyed in a fire. So it's really hard to put it all together, but it's so much fun to stay connected.
All right,
Wow.
that is fun. We had the same experience with my Irish roots, by the way.
Well, I didn't realize their census records just were gone.
Yeah, it was very hard once we got back to that point. So you're all here because you have a loved one who has a mental health challenge, a serious mental illness. How are your loved ones doing?
I would say that our daughter is sleeping more than usual and staying in bed a lot more. We have to, and that's why she lives with us, and that's why we have to be so creative to try to get her out of the bed and interested in doing things. One day she said, "What's the reason? It's nowhere to go and nothing to do, so why should I even, even try?" So we try to encourage her, and typically when we get her up and going, she's okay. It's just initially the thought of it. So I think it's been pretty hard on her. But she's a trooper. She's pretty resilient, and as long as she has someone close by to talk to or to spend a little time with, she's okay.
She enjoys talking to her grandmother, so she'll get grandma on the phone, and they'll do not Zoom, but it's some other thing
Duo.
They do duo so they can see each other. And grandma lives around the corner, so we'll even go over there sometimes and like that.
Well, for us, our son, of course, is 42, and he's doing quite well. He's kept his regular schedule, and that works really well for him. He has his own room. Dale has his room. I have my office, and then we come together for meals. He seems to not be so worried about the coronavirus, and I'm really glad that he does live with us, because otherwise he would be quite alone, and so he's very appreciative. That's something that he is voicing quite frequently. So I think he's thought about a lot of this stuff.
Aw. Well, that's good to hear. Yeah, I appreciate that. I live alone with just my dog, Roxy. So I have to make an effort not to be isolated. It's very easy to spend way too much time alone. So yeah, but I appreciate my NAMI family. All my office mates are wonderful. So the next question, y'all have taught family to family many times over the years, and I'm wondering, there's so many tools in that family to family toolkit. Which have you found most valuable to yourselves personally?
One of the things that I think is empathy. Empathy for what our loved ones, for me, it was empathy for our loved ones. And a kind of a stepping back and appreciating how difficult it is to live with a mental health issue, and what does our son need to be able to tackle all the things that he needs to do to live with his mental health issue. And so doing things that as Dale said, lead to his strengths, help him remember his strengths, that lead to his feeling positive when he wakes up in the morning and ready to tackle the day. So I think that's probably what we do that we've used from the family to family course.
I had a conversation with a friend who's a parent also, and she shared that, you know, this is my only son and I won't see his prom and I won't see his graduation. And that is heartbreaking. It affects everybody.
Were you asking the question about what tools that we have been most valuable to us that we use today?
Yes.
Okay. So Al's response was the I statements, the reflective responses. That's been very valuable. The effective communication, we teach that and we utilize it within our home.
To bring everyone up to speed, I know a lot of the people who are in our virtual studio audience, you may already know about family to family, but if you don't, maybe I'll ask the Manns to explain what that response is. The stages of response to emotional trauma.
That's
okay. Yeah, we can talk about that, but it's a very useful tool that's a part of the family to family curriculum. It says there are various predictable emotional responses that we all have to some sort of a traumatic event, a crisis or whatever. And they're listed in terms of what happens with a crisis, where there's shock, confusion, and denial. And then there can be coping responses of anger, guilt, grief, those kinds of things. And then there could be advocacy, which is empathy, acceptance, and motivation, determination. So it's along the line of things that happen to any or all of us, particularly when we have the trauma of a mental health diagnosis, or maybe an individual is experiencing their own response. But these are also very helpful kinds of things for any kind of event, and we feel can be very helpful for what's happening now to not only the families of NAMI, but the whole world. There's a lot of commonality to the kinds of things that people are experiencing that they've never experienced before. So we feel everybody should take family to family. I was telling Sandy today, I was thinking about that. It'd be nice to know the people that have taken this and how that class has helped them to deal with this particular event compared to those who did not have the class and had exposure to these kinds of materials, because these are wonderful materials and they help people. It doesn't diminish what the NAMI families are going through, but it gives them some of the skills to deal with that others may not have ever thought of or had.
That's a really good summary, and there are so many benefits to the class. I truly wish everyone could take it. There are just so many skills, so many ways to communicate. Another tool that I think Mimi mentioned was I statements. So I want to say, although I feel frustrated when technology doesn't go well, I feel elated at how helpful these responses have been. So,
very good, Meg. Very good.
Hey,
right.
We can hear you well, Mimi.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad.
Oh yeah, that's so much better. Do you have anything you'd like to add now that we can hear you clearly? Thank you for calling in.
Oh, you're welcome. I just wanted to say on the definition of predictable is expected, anticipated, probable, likely, obvious. So when family members hear these words, it allows them to give themselves permission to feel certain emotions. And I know for me, it was grief. And sometimes I did not want to, prior to being connected to NAMI, I didn't want to acknowledge that I was grieving this journey, this mental illness journey. And so after NAMI, I was able to accept that it's okay and that it's part of the emotional response that is predictable.
Another piece that I find very valuable is self-care. The focus, the fact that we have a piece of the program that focuses on self-care, telling you that you have to take care of yourself, you have to have time for yourself, and to figure out what you can do to make yourself feel better, to make yourself stronger and more able, because if you fall apart, then you need help. So self-care is very, very important part of the family-to-family course, and I remind myself of that all the time, not let myself run too far down with trying to take care of all the things that need to be done and spend some time rejuvenating and taking care of myself.
Yeah, I think those are wonderful points, that validation, because so many of us before mental illness touched our own lives personally, our culture really doesn't teach us much. You know, if you stumble into a lot of information about mental health, for the average bear, you're just lucky. So most of us sort of were hit on the head with this situation, and to get that validation that NAMI shows you, I mean, yeah, it's very normal to feel that way. You're going to feel frustrated. You're going to feel some despair. That's just so powerful, and that self-care piece is really important as well, because we can't fill anyone else's cup if our own cup is empty.
Yes.
All right, so moving right along, we're going to have the Smiths go first this time. One of people's favorite parts of the family-to-family class is when families share their stories. So to the extent that you are comfortable, would you share some of your story with us tonight?
Well, when our daughter was 16, she came home from school one day and said, I need to go to the hospital. And we were like, what's wrong? What's wrong? And she just was severely depressed. So we took her to the hospital, and that was an ordeal. But after the hospital, we went to a private doctor, and she was prescribed antidepressant. Well, what we didn't know and what wasn't told to us back then was if you have bipolar disorder and you're given out antidepressants, it could trigger a manic episode. And that's exactly what happened. She went into a manic episode, and it took quite some time to finally get a diagnosis. And that's when we got the diagnosis of bipolar, and that was the beginning of our journey.
At what point did you find NAMI, may I ask?
My wife reads everything. So she was reading, and she said, I found this organization, NAMI. We should check it out. And that's how we found it. She just, her reading, I think she read something in a magazine about it.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm so glad she did. So how about Dale and Sandy?
Well, our story is a fairly long story. So I think we made it through the first 10 years kind of on our own. But the last 10, we've reached out to NAMI, and it has made us such a difference, both for Dale and for me and our involvement and putting our energies that way, but also for he has benefited from what we've learned. And we benefit from having him in our lives. And But I wanted to share some of the things that, you know, like I told you, I reached out to our family and families, friends, and I got some very interesting stories. Would it be okay if I shared some of those? That I got permission to do that.
Yeah, just in a minute or two, sure, a summary
Okay.
would be great.
Yeah, just a summary, because most of them were really quite appreciative of the skills that they got from the class. A couple, three said that they listen better and communicate better, the way Al was saying, the statements that we practice, the way we practice in the class, that they were actually doing that. A couple described how they've seen growth in their loved one because of just sort of that what is it, tender loving neglect, where we give them safety and support, but don't make pressure to do something that they're not ready to do. And so they become the master of their own schedule, their own environment, what they want to do. Several have said that they communicate better with their doctors, learned how to communicate better with other family members about mental health by taking the class. And the importance of the connections that families bring to a loved one who is struggling with a mental health issue, that is just incredibly valuable, and that support is different than enabling, and that so many people who look from the outside into our family situation, they think it's something they wouldn't do, but until they've walked in our shoes, we are making decisions based on a lot of sound human experience. Short enough?
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I think it's always important to appreciate that we don't have the insight or the experience that other people have. And I try not to question what other people do, because you don't know what their life feels like, and you don't know the wisdom that went into whatever decision they made that isn't clear to me, because it's not my business. So yeah, I appreciate that. Dale or Mimi, did you want to add anything to that before we move on?
No,
Well,
summarized it very well.
I wanted to add something to what Al said about our story, and that is NAMI offers a program called NAMI Basics, and I think that we also teach NAMI Basics, but it helps family members and loved ones understand children and adolescents who might have symptoms and or are diagnosed with a mental illness. And so sometimes we don't want to believe that children or adolescents can have a mental illness, and we shrug things off. But NAMI Basics really teaches you what to look for and how to go about getting a diagnosis, how to advocate for your children, and it's really an awesome resource.
Yeah, thanks, Mimi. That is a really important resource, NAMI Basics. That's for parents and caretakers of young ones who have been diagnosed or shown symptoms before the age of 13. And it is a really different ball of wax, because you have the school to deal with, and what is an individual education plan, and what are my rights? What can I legally expect from the school? And then once they turn 18, maybe I'm still paying for their care, but the information flow is turned off rather abruptly. So it's a whole new world from what I understand. I appreciate your bringing that up.
Thanks.
Yeah, so NAMI Basics. Okay. I'm looking at this question, and I think we've covered the next question I was going to ask. So I'll go with this one, and this is to the Manns first. With COVID-19 making in-person treatment so difficult, I really feel for families who are coping with a new diagnosis right now. Right now, when maybe people are stuck in the house, when school is closed, when, in-person appointments are really hard to come by. What words of encouragement would you offer to families in that situation?
Well, I would definitely,
Well-
oh, did Al have something he wanted to say?
Yeah, I'll go. The most powerful thing that I can tell you is treatment works. It takes time and effort, and you may require a lot of patience, but it works. Finding the right doctor, the right therapist, the right medication can be a long process, but don't give up. Stay with it and develop your wellness plan so that you can live the best life. And so in this time where you may not have contact with the doctors as much, just stick with it. If you got to do it virtually, if you got to do it over the phone, stick with the process. Treatment works, and so don't give up.
One of the things
Right.
one of the things I've noticed in attending the school mental health initiative, that teachers are discussing mental health. Of course, the school mental health initiative is all about students in school and mental health. But they are saying that the mental health is the kind of the last thing that parents can deal with. Most of the time they're looking, and they're even mentioning that old thing from our college years, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that we need to meet those needs first. Safety, the food, and so helping our loved ones maintain that sense of safety and a sense of healthy food, a sense of a healthy environment, and a sense of connection is as valuable as anything. And with the COVID, our insurance companies are beginning to look at telehealth and paying telehealth the same way they pay for in-person. There are also some absolutely wonderful apps that are out there free to use, breathing apps, meditation apps, mindfulness apps. There's one called the Virtual Hope Box, which is a way to kind of plan for more positive things in your life. So there are some ways that we've talked about it, how difficult it must be for families who have gone through what we went through when we were in crisis and not have that connection to a provider or a connection for hospitalization, because, there's probably some fear for that. I know I've gotten a couple of different emails from different North Carolina hospitals who are doing virtual check-ins. And so there's a lot of things that have been kind of retooled so people can get the kind of what Al was talking about. Reaching out for treatment does help. Reaching out for someone else to be on your care management team is incredibly valuable, even if it is virtual at this point. Did you want to add?
Well, that was great.
Yeah.
I think
What I love.
the only other thing, go ahead, Peg. She said I have anything to add. I just think the only other thing I have to add is that I agree with what both of them are saying. And I think that the telehealth is being represented highly now because of a way to connect, and that it'll be something that will be an additive, but it'll not replace as we get back to face-to-face meeting, but eventually it will add to it and should make our ability to access people much better. So I think we need to look at it that way.
Yeah, I love that Al immediately caught that spirit of hope. We must never ever give up hope, as the family support group principals on both sides say. We must never
Absolutely.
ever give up hope. And that's just the most important thing, to keep going and realize there's a light at the end of the tunnel, although sometimes the tunnel is crooked and you can't see it. And I love that you all caught those details and spoke to the system and the value of telehealth, because it does work and it will be more effective in reaching folks in rural areas, for example, and that'll benefit us for a long time beyond this COVID-19 situation. So Mimi, did you want to add anything? I really don't want to leave anyone out or miss any gems here.
Well, I just want to say kudos to the teachers out there, because I think now is the time that the young people are still in school and taking classes. I'm focusing on young people right now, and that's very stressful. And so if the teachers now focus on, like was said earlier, the Maslow hierarchy of needs, that first we have to make sure that they're safe, that they're fed, and all of those things. And I think the teachers might be the first line right now for actually being able to do Zoom with the young people who might be feeling anxious or worried or whatever, and really focus not so much on the academics right now, but on their mental health needs and providing some support and encouragement in that area. And I think the teachers are doing a pretty good job with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Just like the frontline healthcare workers, the teachers, and NAMI teachers, NAMI program leaders, everyone is being asked to just take their comfort zone and throw it away. Everyone's being asked to do everything on our virtual platform, learn new skills, interact in ways that we may not have been comfortable with. So you're right. There's just, people are really rising to the occasion, I think, and I'm grateful for it. I think it's neat that we get to see a brighter side of people along with the downsides. Resilience, I guess that's the word that comes to mind. So
yeah.
I'm picking the best question here on the list because we keep covering things in advance because you guys are ahead of the curve. So clearly this is a scary time for a lot of people, and we won't minimize that. There's a lot of struggle with isolation, economics. But from your perspective, all of you, have any silver linings emerged? I think it's Dale or
Well,
Sandy.
for me,
I keep messing that up. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
For me, I think that what I have found is that we're kind of meshing the old and the new. We're using technology, but we also have to use what I call old school ideas, old school way of doing things. We were outside the other day playing hopscotch. And, you know, my daughter didn't really know what that was. She didn't really know how to do that. So we had to teach her how to do that. But so technology is good and wonderful, but we're also learning to appreciate the things that sewing masks. Who would think you would need a sewing machine in this time? I mean, tailors do and people like that, but people are actually coming together, sewing face masks for other people, for the frontline workers. And so whoever has a sewing machine right now is really on a hot market. So I appreciate, and I think that just appreciating both ways of doing things is so important.
I'll add to what Mimi says. I think the unfortunate part of this is that maybe the world has become a little complacent and taken a lot of things for granted. And I think this has made all of us, including myself, sit back and look at the things that are really important, that are day-to-day things like going to the grocery store and doing just basic things that you used to do fairly easy just on the whim. Now you got to sort of plan them a little bit better and making sure you're taking care of yourself and everybody else as you're doing those activities. So I think it's helped us all to sit back and reflect a little bit on that and maybe appreciate the things we do have and appreciate the people that are doing things for us. The people are staffing the grocery stores, the people that are delivering the mail. We talk about first responders and healthcare providers, and they have really been hit hard by this, but all those other people are out there doing things too. I think it's also brought out a bigger and a macro level emphasis on the importance of health and the broad definition of health to include mental health. And it's caused a lot of people to think about things that they haven't thought about before in terms of the stress in their lives that they never even considered and they have to deal with now, that it's probably been a little bit difficult. So I think from that part, that's good. I hope we can keep the strong emphasis on all of health, including mental health, moving ahead. I think there's been a lot of spotlight on that, and I hope we can keep that going. And NAMI is a big voice in that, and I think we've got a lot to offer as a big partner in that whole mental health arena.
I feel like the creativity, you know, if you watch some of the things that are online, they're showing different families are sharing the creative things that they're doing. They're having dance contests, they're doing these different challenges, and people are picking up on it and you know, doing it themselves at home, and celebrities are on doing different things. So we are learning that we can be more creative. We have that ability in us, and we can use it. And the simple things, I've noticed a lot of families out together in the neighborhoods together. I see them at the ponds, they're fishing, having little picnics in their little groups. So a lot more intact family activity, you know, where I think as a society, we've gotten into the habit, and it's just normal for us for everybody to do their own thing. Everybody's watching a different program. Everybody's on their different phone. You know, they're eating separately. But I think this forcing us together, this being locked in the house for a lot of hours together, has forced us to be creative and forced us to look at the family and interact in positive ways.
Yeah, really positive answers there. There have been silver linings. I think in terms of what people are doing at home and how we're treating each other. Also from the chat box, a note from the business community, there's an app for your phone called Headspace. I use it myself, it is wonderful. The Headspace meditation mindfulness app is offering 1 free year of Headspace Deluxe for anyone who is unemployed. That is about $100 value, and it is a really great app. I highly recommend it. Great offer for anyone who has found themselves unemployed due to COVID-19. So thanks very much, Lawrence, for putting that in the chat box. This question has been there for a little while. Someone took I'm just going to read it, quote unquote. I took the family-to-family teacher training 20 years ago. I know there have been a lot of changes over the past few years. What changes have you seen, and how do you feel about those changes?
I'll take that one. I'll start because we started with some curriculum that was really old, and it sounds like Mimi and Al have been doing it about the same length of time, and it has only gotten better. It's a lot more user-friendly. The last redo, they added videos, which just do a tremendous amount of explanation of things that we used to have to read. And then the new changes, I don't know how much this person knows, but the class has now changed from a 12-week class to an 8-week class. And they have begun to take, it still has the same material and the same emphasis, and it's still the same program that has been researched, and it's really tried to stay with the fidelity to that program, but they have taken out a few things that we didn't focus on too much, and then compacted what is left. And I haven't taught the new way yet. Have Mimi and Al taught the new 8-week class?
So we were scheduled to train the trainer here in Charlotte, I think in March. Was that March, Peg?
It sure was. And the Friday before, we got a notice from DHHS that travel funds were not being reimbursed at all.
Mhm.
So that put kind of a damper on the whole event.
Had to cancel.
Mm.
Yeah, so we took the training for the 8 weeks, from the change from the 12 to 8 weeks, but we haven't actually taught it that way yet.
Yeah, that's kind of where we are too. But I have talked to a couple people who have taught it, and they really like it. Really like it. It's hard to do. You know, the classes used to be 2.5 hours, and it's really hard when we're first in the thick of teaching it to stay with all the new material within that 2.5 hours. So I think it's must be pretty intense to try to get through it all. And it'll be interesting to see. I've talked to, like I said, I've reached out to a few of our family to family graduates, and have asked a couple of them if they think it would work in a virtual environment. And they all seem to think it will. So I haven't had a negative response yet. So I know in NAMI Wake County, they're going to try a family-to-family virtual here shortly, and then they're going to go forward through the fall. I think maybe they'll stay with the virtual. I don't know for sure, but I know this one coming up is going to be virtual, so it will be interesting to see how that. Because we have found the virtual to be a lot more user friendly and a lot more connected than we had expected it to be.
Yeah, now that I've gotten comfortable with Zoom, which is the platform we're currently using, of course, I find it's a really nice way to communicate, and I'm very comfortable with it. Family to family, oh my goodness, they did a wonderful job reducing the class from 12 weeks to 8, and they unveiled that early this year, so January of 2020, and then within a few months, that was just enough time for teachers to go online and get used to the new materials and get certified to teach them, and then boom, everything shut down. So there aren't that many teachers who've had time to teach the class yet. But yeah, you're right, Sandy. We've got virtual offerings coming in Raleigh and Boone coming up, and in the Forest City area, I believe. And the nice thing about virtual classes and groups is that you can join from anywhere in the state as long as there's availability. You know, they can't have an enormous class, but it's much nicer as far as not having to travel. Yeah, so I think we covered that question pretty well.
Yeah.
And I think we moved right into, as we've been doing all night, the next one, which was, are there classes scheduled during this virtual time? If you're a NAMI member, you should be receiving the Tuesday newsletter, which Lori Madison, who's helping us out tonight, does an awesome job on. And that includes a lot of information about class listings, so you can always check there. Another comment from Lawrence, my friend, I have found keeping a steady mindfulness practice to be helpful. Does anyone else use that? I would love to hear about it. Panelists?
Are the Smiths still there? I got a big blue block.
Must be
Yeah,
a-
Al and Mimi, you appear to be muted. Either Lori or the two of you could fix that, I believe.
So mindfulness is, when I met Dale back in the 1970s, mindfulness was really around.
And we're only 30 years old now, as opposed to Al.
And so, you know, the concept of that being the perspective that one takes when things around them are so difficult to deal with, focus on one thing, focus on your own peace and breathing. To me, the breathing has been probably the thing that I've used the most, and that I've used with others as a teacher, not as a family-to-family teacher, but as a classroom teacher with children. using breathing and just sort of calming and then focus in again is wonderful. We have some old audio tapes of mindfulness exercises. So we also have VHS tapes and DVDs, and now everything's on an app. So yes, Lawrence, we have found that to be helpful personally, as well as for our son, and we all could benefit from the skills that mindfulness teaches us.
I agree with what Senny said and with what Lauren said. I think it's a very useful tool. And I think mindfulness can be a lot of different things to a lot of different people, depending on who they are and what they need and how it benefits them. So everybody needs to apply it and keep looking at new ways that it helps them, because it really does help get focused, number one. Even getting up in the morning and saying, oh, what can I do, what I need to do, all those kinds of things. So yes, a wonderful idea, Lawrence, I agree.
So another thing along with the mindfulness is music. We have noticed that playing more calming music can in our home environment, in the car when we're driving, is also very helpful.
Any advice or wisdom to families where the loved one has dual diagnosis, such as bipolar disorder and substance use? Restrictions from the pandemic have really been a driver for an upswing in symptoms, including compulsive drinking. Help! All suggestions are appreciated.
Support at home is good. I think any kind of virtual support groups, whether they be for substance use and or mental health challenges use, is good. Helping to be connected, reminding of skills that they've used before in their past. What's worked for you in the past? What kinds of things do you like? What are your needs? And that's where the emotional stages can help a lot, because on there, it says for families, and then there's one for peer-to-peer that has one for individuals there. If they have access to those, to look at where they're at and try to identify what you're thinking and feeling at a particular time, and then look at what you need, because those emotional stages tell you things that is kind of like a roadmap of what you can do and take action. So just doing something to respond in the best way you can is very useful.
I think continuity is important. You know, there's a lot of things that's different, but if you can focus on the things that are the same that you enjoy, you know, something as simple as a favorite TV program, you can go back to a favorite book, you know, just the things that you always loved, having some continuity, a favorite person that you enjoy speaking to. I remember that at different points in time, different people, not my daughter, that were having mental health crisis, a lot of them had what I consider a safe person. And when they were in a stressful situation, they wanted to talk to, spend time with, be with that person. For some reason, that particular person gave them a little more sense of security, of safety, of calmness, of peace. And so it can be a person, it could be an object, it could be, you know, those little things that can help them calm down in the moment, I think is very important. If you can identify things that help you and go back to those things.
Piggybacking on that, I would say, yeah, the strengths that a person has, remind them of them. Remind, as Dale said, what did they do in the past that helped them deal with the alcohol desire to drink? Smoking is another one that a lot of people with COVID fears are saying, I really want to quit smoking. And so, you know, utilizing, as Al said, the way things that worked for you in the past, and those safe places. And of course, all of us can be nervous about what is happening to our loved one and can add to the stress that they're dealing with. And alcoholism, and to a certain extent, as our loved ones age, their mental health issues, that's their issue to deal with. And we can be support, or we can be a stressor. And so we can look at our environments and good healthy food, encouraging, let's all go for a walk, the games that the Smiths talk about playing, and those kinds of things that distract from the desire to drink, or to find drugs. Money is going to be short, in short supply, so getting those extra things for a lot of people can be a stress. So yeah, no answers, because those answers come from within the person. All we can do as family members is really kind of help pull it out of them, to help them feel safe, so they can reach down inside and pull out the strength that they need to do the things that they need to do.
And what I like about NAMI, the Family to Family program, is that they give you a whole host of resources that you can walk away with.
Yeah.
And they are constantly reminding the participants, the family members, that they're the experts, that the teachers or the facilitators are not the experts, that you actually are the experts. You know your loved one, you know what worked in the past, as Dale was saying. You know all these things about your loved one that we don't know, but we will give you the resources and the information that you can use.
All right. Well, I'm definitely hearing all that wisdom of all those family to family classes coming through here tonight. I like the structure, the reminding people what worked for them in the past, keeping them busy in positive ways, and keeping ourselves busy in positive ways. Those are all certainly things that help me. So a little aside from the sort of an addition to the last question. By the way, liquor stores have remained open as essential services. Really? Essential?
I would agree.
I heard a scientist talk about that one on the news, and he said that they consulted alcohol counselors before they made that decision. Maybe it was one of the governors actually, who was saying that that they decided that was an essential business, because the not having that available is a much larger problem.
I would agree with that. I know for a late stage alcoholic, withdrawal can be, it can cause illness and even death. So, but it does, on the face of it, it is kind of, you know, it sounds odd. So I definitely appreciate the question. All right, this is kind of a policy question, a very general question. How do you feel about the state's support of mental health present day? And how has it evolved in the past 10 to 120 years? That's a very broad question. Who wants to take that one?
Well, the question was, what do you think about Union North Carolina state?
Yeah, policy.
Yes.
Oh,
The state's support of mental health present day, and how has it evolved basically in the last century, give or take?
wow.
Yeah.
That's a hard one.
Okay.
I'll give a general, and I'm going to include New York in this because we're originally from New York, and I remember in New York when they closed all the mental hospitals, the state-run hospitals, and people were just basically put on the street. You know, you were sent home, or if you didn't have a home, you went to a homeless shelter, wherever they had to go. They just emptied all those state hospitals, and some people thought that was good, some people thought it was bad, but it really increased the homeless population in New York. I know that's what happened there. As far as bringing it up more to today, I think we've made improvements. We have made improvements. I think NAMI has been phenomenal about bringing things to light and keeping the politicians informed about what changes need to happen and the importance of keeping us on their side and doing little things to help things along. So I think we have started that dialogue and we are keeping it going. And as long as we can stay in the ears of the people who are making the decisions, I think we can continue to have a positive impact on that.
I would agree with Al. We've only been here 4 years, so I can't speak to the last 100 years, but I think.
Okay, actually, the gentleman clarified, he meant the last 10 to 20 years.
10 to 20. Well, I can only speak to the last almost 4 years. I think what Al said, you stay with it, we stay with it. We keep it in the forefront of not only the state legislature and the State Department, but we keep it in front of the public. We keep working at more and more collaboration. Again, I think part of the silver lining of this COVID-19 is that I think we have a greater chance of being a strong voice for mental health in the overall picture of health, and that we can work more in collaboration with providers, because providers have really been traumatized in a lot of ways. And I think they have been humbled and found out some things about themselves that they didn't realize before too. So I think we can work together and collaborate much better. In terms of the state organization, I think that Dr. Manny Cohen has been a great person to come in, and Cody Kinsley you had on last week, I think, Peg. I think the state is being very supportive. We all wish that we could have the Medicaid program authorized here, but in the meantime, we need to keep doing things, and NAMI North Carolina is really the point to move to the next step to help with that and be a strong voice in that. So everybody keep doing that. I'd suggest just on not only a state level, but on a micro level, keep talking to your representatives, keep talking to your neighbors, keep talking to your churches. I think the churches are a better place to be approached now too. So we just need to keep at it, like Al said, and slowly but surely it's going to improve.
One of the things that I've noticed is there's a saying out there, nothing about us without us. There's a lot more representation from individuals with mental health issues and from family members. And so they're listening. There's forums for them to speak to the policymakers. There's forums where they can interact with the doctors, the legislators. So I think there's more, I think that the powers to be are realizing that families have a lot to offer in the mental health, the scope of everything mental health. And individuals who are living through what they're living through have a whole lot more to offer than we thought at the very beginning 100 years ago. So 10 to 20 years ago, I don't know what it was like. I know when I first started reading about the mental health issues that our son, this was over 20 years ago, there was still a lot of blame of family members. So I can't speak to North Carolina. I think that's across the board everywhere. But I think there's more value placed on listening to the people who are living with mental health issues and their families.
Yeah, I agree. And I have to say the National Office of NAMI has done a stellar job with tracking outcomes of our programs, working with the academic community. And as a result, for example, NAMI Family to Family is an evidence-based practice according to SAMHSA. That's the federal level Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. And so that does lead to better funding, that leads to better credibility. And the national folks have done a very nice job with that. Any follow-up on that? We do have another question coming up.
I just would like to see a little bit more done. I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer, but I would like to see a little bit more done regarding mental health parity. It came out of the box and it seemed like it was that we were on the right track, and then all of a sudden it just fizzled out. And I'd just like to see a bit more done in that area.
That's a great point. I believe that's one of the points in the National NAMI Strategic Plan, is to look not just at parity, whether it exists on paper, but is it being enforced? Because I believe by and large, the answer is no.
Yes.
Yeah, so thank you for that. That's wonderful. And I'm not going to respond with a womp womp. I would not do that.
Okay.
So, all right, another question. Let's see. Okay, moved right out of my sight while I was talking. What suggestions would you give for someone who is supporting a loved one with mental illness while struggling yourself?
Take the NAMI family to family class. We have frequently had family members who are dealing exactly with that. And it's perspective. It's perspective.
So are they saying that they're struggling with a mental health issue themselves?
Yes,
I believe so.
while caring for someone.
Yes. Yeah. I think it boils down to, and NAMI family to family does talk about self-care, and Al was mentioning it earlier. Just being able to take care of yourself first. That's always, I mean, in NAMI, I think I heard it in NAMI, but like when you're on the airplane and the airbag comes down and they tell you to put you on your oxygen first before you get, and that's what you need to do, even if you have a mental health issue yourself, because it's only going to be even more stress if you're trying to care for someone else. You have to take what you need for yourself before you can give to someone else.
Absolutely.
I think genuine, open communication about what you're experiencing and what you're dealing with as a family member, whether it be a sibling or a child who's living with mental health issues, but that genuine, if you must be a bit vulnerable, which is sometimes difficult to do, but if you are honest and open about, as Al mentioned, the I statements, always make those I statements. They work really well for being open and honest. And share
Yes,
how difficult it is. It's difficult. I'm having trouble X. I'm feeling anxious about X. That does give you a certain vulnerability, but it also lets the other person know that that they have agency and that they can choose to be a helper for you.
Amy, were you going to add something? Or Al?
Again, I'm just piggybacking on everybody else. That self-care is important. Being open and honest is important, saying, okay, I know you're having this issue, but this is what I'm dealing with right now. And once I take care of this, then we can deal with that. Prioritizing is very important. Maybe the other person's issue is more paramount right now. So you deal with them first and then you second. But it's important to prioritize and then get busy, do what needs to be done.
Yeah, I really like that. I like the suggestion of sharing your space and sharing I'm feeling anxious because And it can be difficult to sit with that vulnerability and that uncertainty, but it is also important to have that authentic conversation and to take care of yourself.
And I think the reflective listening piece that we practice is also helpful, because it lets you know you don't have to have all the answers. Just listen and reflect back what you heard, and sometimes you'll see things just de-escalate and you don't have to have all the answers. So if you have mental health concerns of your own, that doesn't mean you have to solve someone else's questions or answers or problems. Just listen, that's all.
Yeah, and tell me if I'm getting this right for those who haven't taken the course yet. Reflective listening is where I'm listening to what someone says and I'm responding back sort of the emotional content of what I hear. So I can really hear the distress in your voice. That sounds like a frustrating situation, that kind of thing.
Yes.
Yes.
You can also just reflect back their words, because oftentimes we choose words to describe what they're feeling when we could easily use each other's words. So if someone is talking about it in a certain way, use those words with them. And if you can get them to do the same with you, what you're describing, they may be taking it a different way completely.
Right. It often de-escalates a situation when the person who's most frustrated realizes that they've actually been heard, they've actually been understood.
Yes.
So that reflective listening is letting them know that I did hear what you said, I understood what you said. Because sometimes we get, even people without a mental health challenge can get frustrated when they're trying to communicate something to you because it's very important to them and they don't think you're getting it, they don't think you're listening, they don't think they're being understood. But once they realize, okay, I heard it, I got it, I understand, and they know that they were understood, it helps de-escalate situations.
One of the family participants that sent some information to me said that one of the takeaways that they had from the family to family class was that words matter. The words we choose to use to describe mental health issues, also the words that we say to our loved one in the heat of a chaos can be very upsetting. And to apologize can be very cathartic. It can say, I see you as a person, and I apologize for what my words did. And so there are lots of ways that our society, and we're all part of that society, that we pick up the way we discuss things. And so it's really important to kind of listen, and words matter.
Words matter.
Yeah, people do get attached to our language, I know, exactly. So a couple really interesting comments from the chat box. One about access to care. It's the stigma of mental health issues that has presented a huge barrier to treatment and support. I think, at least I hope, that is finally changing. Thank you for that comment, I agree with that. Another hopeful thought, maybe COVID-19 will be the spark to ignite changes to our mental health system that has been a bit dysfunctional in the last few years. Hard times do create change. So thank you for sharing those words of wisdom. Those are really good.
I think, Peg, I agree. I think it can be a spark, but I think we need to keep that spark alive and keep adding a little fire to it. So we need to keep it in the front of folks so that they don't forget.
Because they'll
Absolutely.
be going to be busy with the economics of it all.
Yes.
Absolutely. So we've got just a few minutes. If someone has a last minute question they'd like to sneak into the Q&A box, feel free to do so. In the meantime,
I had one.
yes.
You had asked about other pandemics or other health issues, one of your questions. And it's interesting, I had the memory of the polio epidemic. We were on the tail end. back in the late 1940s, early 50s, had the economic, the feeling about the depression and how his parents had to deal with the depression. So, you know, on what we're discussing, what we have here is a twofold issue. We have the health issue, but the economic issue, which is going to cause all kinds of changes to the mental health field, to the health field. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of my standard questions that we didn't have time for tonight, but I'm glad you touched on it. The question is, what does this era remind you of historically, either your personal history or globally? So thank you, Sandy.
We just had different reactions. I mean, we both remembered something different from our childhood.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
My brother in San Jose emailed all of us 1,000 articles about the flu pandemic of 1918. So that's all I ever think of now. All right, I want to thank Gary Kreitz and Lori Matson, our NAMI North Carolina colleagues who are working behind the scene tonight. I really want to thank our panelists, the Smiths and the Manns, for your time tonight, and also all the hours and hours of volunteer work that went before tonight, contributing to your communities and to the families in your area who struggle with mental illness in their family, and lifting them up and doing so much to give back. We're very, very grateful to you for all of that. Another show has flown by. Again, I appreciate you all so much. We had the rules change, we had some challenges, and we kept improvising and overcoming. And what does that remind me of? Dealing with mental illness.
We stayed with it. Yeah.
It was right. A perfect example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Peg, we'd like to thank you for putting this on, you and Lori, for the Thursday evening education event. I think that's a wonderful thing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been fun. It's been an honor, really. So and this time is.
It's needed. It's needed.
I do hear that, and I hope we're able to continue after the pandemic ends. I think it helps us connect as a state, and I've gotten a lot of good feedback along those lines.
Yeah.
So it's certainly been a pleasure to me. Any other final words of wisdom?
No, it's nice to meet everybody. I hope if any of our students are listening out there, we'll say hi to them.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I think several of our friends have said they were going to sign on. I know one I was seeing. So thanks to that for the support. I needed it.
That's wonderful.
Hello, Charlotte.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I should thank our studio audience too for hanging in there. A lot of people stuck with us. So I appreciate your patience. Another session has flown by. To our virtual audience, please be well in the week ahead and observe social distancing. Do whatever it takes. Go wherever you need to go. Be well and be safe.